Hello and welcome to Creepy Puppets Presents. I'm your puppeteer, Tommy, and I like to talk about the weirder dimension of philosophy. In my day job, I'm a biostatistician, so divination, or methods of predicting the future, deeply fascinate me. And when I look at medieval astrology in particular, I see a primitive form of statistics, specifically a form of harmonic regression. So harmonic regression models utilize periodicity. For example, we can be reasonably sure that the party of the President of the United States will change about every 8 years. So in 2018, I developed a model to predict elections based on horoscopes. Here's how that went. Maybe there's an advantage, a natural advantage to Biden, but in reality, this election is going to be a 50-50. Here is that calculation table. It looks like the Democrats will keep control of at least one house of Congress. Wow, the quality of my video has improved over the last 2 years. Maybe not by as much as I'd hoped. So it's the day after the election, and though we don't know all the results yet, who thought control of Congress would still be up for grabs when every rational person predicted a red wave? Well, if you're one of the 35 people who saw my video, you knew the red tsunami wasn't happening 21 months ago. The takeaway here, trust the pseudoscience. Now, I've run my model for 2024, and I have a prediction, but we need to talk about a few important things in this election first. So why were the mainstream polls wrong? This is pretty obvious to anyone who's been following this. They underestimated Dem turnout, which probably should have been accounted for, given Dem anger over Roe v. Wade. It's still a possibility that Dems could hold the House, though most models are clocking Republican control at like 121-ish seats. But the big story is the Senate. So turning to that, this is the Senate map by who is up at the time of recording. Between making this map an hour ago and recording, Wisconsin has been officially called for Republicans. I predicted the Dems would keep at least one chamber based on a horoscope cast on Election Day. And clearly it would be, but that doesn't account for the Georgia runoff. Different day, different horoscope. Remember, I predicted the 2020 Senate would go to the Republicans, and Republicans got more votes in Georgia, but they blew it in the runoff. And if Dems blow Georgia in the runoff, which is projected to go forward, and Laxalt holds his lead in Nevada, then Republicans could take the Senate. It is a possibility. And I've run my model for the Georgia runoffs. Here's the horoscope from Astrology Cafe. Republicans are at 0 and Democrats are at -1, which suggests to me a razor-thin advantage for Herschel Walker. This doesn't seem too much of a reach, though, as Walker was pulling ahead of Warnock in recent polls. The Kemp-Warnock vote splitters might come home if Senate control is on the line. There may not be enough time to build up those early vote advantages between now and the runoff. The electorate skews whiter and older, and never underestimate Democrats' ability to blow a sure thing. So, to my mind, Republican control of the Senate is possible if they pull it out in Nevada, but Republicans are pretty good at blowing sure things too. I'm also rather surprised with just how successful the Dems' abortion campaign has been, but it does appear to have been the major driver of this historic Dem turnout. There has always been kind of a surprise in me at just how successful pro-choice progressives are. There are several very strong progressive arguments for, if not banning abortion, which they did do in the Soviet Union, then certainly regulating it more tightly than was possible under Roe. You could talk about how abortion policies are eugenical in nature and design and cause disproportionately more abortions among poor women, women belonging to ethnic minorities, and abortion of babies with congenital disabilities. Or you could talk about the labor theory of value and how the average worker contributes, $4 million to the economy over a lifetime. Maybe these aren't perfectly convincing arguments, but a progressive pro-life policy is certainly something you could come up with. But Republicans don't want to cede any ground to progressives, it seems. Like, guys, you can't talk about how abortion is murder, because everyone who already agrees with that is already on your side. I don't think the democracy argument has been terribly persuasive. Certainly not with me, and also with the exit polls. And here's my misspent semester of law school coming in handy. So the Electoral College is inherently anti-democratic. The state governments ultimately have the authority over whom they want to send to the Electoral College. Yeah, there are state and federal laws regulating it, and it would almost certainly go to a conservative Supreme Court. But A red state theoretically could give all of their electors to the Republican Party regardless of the vote, if they wanted to. And even the most extreme election deniers weren't posing anything nearly as extreme. So the Dem arguments, basically, it doesn't matter how bad things are for you, vote for us or the Republicans will exercise powers they already have on the Constitution. Hate the game, not the players. But despite weak Dem arguments and a terrible economy, people just didn't like the Republicans by more, which is kind of what our horoscope showed. So I want to pivot now to the election in Pennsylvania, where I live, because I think it's representative of a lot of the issues that happen nationally. So first, let's talk about the main reason Shapiro and Fetterman won. And I never had any doubt in my mind that Fetterman would win here in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state of extreme regionalism, and I'm talking like sub-county regionalism. Like normally Pittsburgh and Philadelphia have a very intense rivalry, and they rarely come together for things. Like that's why our capital is Harrisburg, which is about equidistant between the two. This means politics in Pennsylvania is extremely personal, able to overcome these rivalries, and Fetterman just has that personal touch. Fetterman is a Bernie-crat with a core of supporters who would walk through hell for him. Oz never had that base, and he never had that touch. You combine immense personal popularity with record Dem turnout, and you have Fetterman outrunning Biden in every county. One bad debate performance wasn't enough to sink him, and I think the disgusting ableist attacks on him made him look better by comparison. Tucker Carlson even ran a piece on him where he implied it was inconceivable Fetterman, because of his disability, could win PA fairly, so if Fetterman caught up to Oz late, it must be cheating. But Fetterman opened up with a 300,000 vote lead, and at the time of writing, Fetterman's margin of victory is over 100,000 votes. Oz was never ahead of him. I believe Fetterman has a decent chance of being president one day. Suck it, Tucker. But also, Oz ran a terrible campaign. He started his primary campaign pretty strong by hammering COVID response, but that issue more or less dissolved in the minds of most voters by the time of the general, and Oz never recovered with a coherent message afterward. In the last 2 weeks or so, Oz has been campaigning on his moderateness, which might have worked, but too little too late. Also, Dems painted Oz as a sleazy carpetbagger who tortures puppies, and Oz never had any response to it, mostly because it was true. Well, mostly true. But at least Oz ran a campaign, which is more than I can say for Doug Mastriano. Mastriano might be an extremist, but unlike most other bath salt Republicans, he's pretty good at hiding his crazy. He's very articulate, and all Mastriano had to do to win was hammer Shapiro on natural gas and energy policy, which is a huge issue in this state. After he won the primary, Mastriano ran no ads for months. Mastriano blew it. And this has just generally been the theme of the MAGA Republicans having no election or campaign experience. Finally, I want to talk about why I think dissatisfaction with representative democracy is growing in our country. So, I'm recording this from my apartment in Hellertown, Pennsylvania, but my permanent residence is in Carbon County, Pennsylvania, near the town of Jim Thorpe. Carbon County is a deep Republican county, and until redistricting, was part of arguably the most Republican district in the state. This is the reason I, despite being pretty progressive, am a registered Republican. I guess I'm in good company. Under redistricting, though, we've been added to the PA 7th, which includes Hellertown, so I don't have to go home to vote anymore, and it comprises the third largest metro area outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, the Allentown metro area. Incumbent Democrat Susan Wild is projected to have won the 7th by about 5,000 votes at the time of this writing, despite losing Carbon County by 30 points. Wild has said some incredibly offensive things about Carbon County residents. She went full basket of deplorables. Carbon County's previous incumbent, Dan Muser, won handily. Redistricting screwed Carbon County. Without favorable gerrymandering, which for rural voters only seems to come from Republicans, rural counties and rural working-class people are consistently screwed by representative democracy because they have to compete with the urban metros, and in national elections, if the Electoral College is abolished, then basically suburban Los Angeles would pick the president every time. Democracies, one of their fundamental flaws is being bad at defending minorities, and in the way our system is set up through representation by geography, it's the rural working class that is a minority in our system. it's completely reasonable that those people would become increasingly hostile to, quote, democracy, which isn't really all that surprising, really. Marginalized groups become less satisfied with systems, the less those systems represent them. Alright, so, here's the horoscope for 2024, as promised. When I turn through the numbers, the out-of-power party are at -1, and the party in power are at 2, which, if Dems control the White House in 2022, means Dems, probably Biden, will win the presidency in a very narrow margin against who will probably be Trump Part 3. Expect House and Senate margins to be even narrower than they are this time around, especially since Dems are up against an even worse Senate map in 24 than they are now. Alright, that's it for now, folks. I'll be back to silly cartoons soon enough. If you live in Georgia, I wish you the best of luck, because it looks like you're going to have to get out the vote one more time. Take care, friends. Bye-bye.